Vera Chen handed the last signed document to the clerk and took the maroon divorce certificate. Her fingertips were cold, but inside she felt a strange looseness, like the heavy shell she'd carried for 7 years had finally cracked open a seam. She looked down at the gold-stamped emblem on the cover and let out a quiet breath. 7 years. 7 years of her life, folded into this thin booklet. Across from her, Derek Zhou tucked his copy into his suit's inner pocket with the casual ease of someone filing a receipt. He even smiled, not the humble, considerate smile he'd worn in front of Vera's parents for 7 years. That smile had always been perfectly calibrated, warm enough to charm, deferential enough to disarm. This one was different. Wider at the corners, fine creases fanning from his eyes, the cultivated gentility peeling off his face like a mask to reveal what lay beneath, something feral, something that had been waiting. "Vera," he said, leaning against the counter and slowly wiping his gold-rimmed glasses with a cloth, "congratulations. You're free." Free. The word hung in the air between them. She'd once believed he meant it when he said he wanted her to be happy. Now she knew better. Every word out of his mouth had always been a tool, a lever, a chess move. Vera didn't respond. She put her certificate in her bag and turned to leave. But Derek's voice followed her, unhurried, like a man who knew exactly when to spring his trap. "Oh, one thing I forgot, before we married, I owed someone $320,000. Never paid it back. Court judgment came down years ago, the debt's matured, and I can't cover it." Vera's steps faltered. The floor beneath her feet seemed to tilt. She turned back slowly. Derek had put his glasses on again, and behind the lenses something glinted, like a hunter finally lifting the lid off a trap he'd set years ago. "So," he continued, dropping his voice to a slow, deliberate murmur, "the apartment I bought you, the Mercedes, and the $18,800 wedding gift, you'll have to return every penny. The court summons is on its way. Keep an eye on your mailbox." He said it like he was ordering takeout. Like he was discussing the weather. 7 years of marriage, 1 daughter, countless sacrifices, and this was how he chose to end it. Not with a fight, not with honesty, but with a legal knife in her back. Vera gripped the doorframe and stared at him for 5 full seconds. Her face didn't crumble. No hysterics. Her lashes dipped once, then she lifted her gaze, and her voice came out steadier than steel, steadier than she'd ever managed in 7 years of swallowing her pride. "Derek, you really have no bottom, do you? Don't make it sound so ugly." His smile widened, satisfied and expansive, like an old fox finally baring every claw. "Your family was happy enough taking the apartment, the car, the cash back then. Now you want to play the victim. That's a bit much, don't you think?" Vera stepped closer, 1 step, 2, until she was close enough to see the tiny veins threading through his eyes. She tilted her head, and a slow, cold smile spread across her lips. The kind of smile she'd never shown him before. The kind that said, "I see you. I see all of you. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'll see you in court, Derek. Bring your best. And tell your friend Malcolm I said hello." The name landed like a slap. Derek's smile flickered, just for a fraction of a second, before he recovered. But Vera had seen it. She'd seen the crack. She turned and walked out before he could respond, the glass door swinging shut behind her with a soft thud that sounded, to her ears, like the closing of a chapter she never wanted to revisit. November wind hit her square in the face, whipping her hair into tangles. She stood on the steps and drew a deep breath, cold air flooding her lungs. Her fingers tightened around her bag strap. Behind her, through the glass, she heard Derek's muffled curse. She didn't look back. She walked to her car, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a long moment with her hands on the wheel. The engine was off. The world outside was gray and cold. But inside her chest, something was burning, something that had been smoldering for years, banked and suppressed, and now finally had oxygen. 7 years of marriage. From college sweethearts to husband and wife. From nothing to her becoming a marketing director. She'd eaten instant noodles with him on nights when they couldn't afford takeout. She'd ridden the crowded subway with him at rush hour, pressed against strangers, her face buried in his shoulder because that was all they could afford. She'd endured drunken clients at business dinners on his behalf, swallowing her pride and her gag reflex while men twice her age made leering comments, because he'd asked her to, because she believed in him. When he'd been at his poorest, her parents had handed over their entire network, connections built over 30 years of her father's career, favors accumulated and never called in, so Derek could climb from a junior sales clerk to regional director. Her father had vouched for him. Her mother had cooked him meals and called him son. They'd treated him like family. And he'd taken everything they offered, smiled his humble smile, and pocketed every last bit of it. Then he'd made money. Real money. The kind that changes people, or, more accurately, reveals what they were all along. A younger woman had curled into his arms, a woman named Selena with a painted face and empty eyes. He'd discarded Vera like an old coat, like she was nothing more than a stepping stone he'd used and outgrown. She hadn't fought him hard on the asset division during the divorce. She'd thought, foolishly, naively, that he'd at least preserve a shred of decency. That after 7 years, after a child, after everything, he'd let her walk away with some dignity. But decency had been a lie. The real ambush came after. He'd buried a landmine under her feet the very day he proposed, 7 years ago, when she was young and in love and too blind to see the man behind the mask. She started the engine and drove home. When Vera walked through her front door, her 5-year-old daughter Lily was sitting on the carpet building with blocks. At the sound of the door, she looked up, her eyes bright as morning stars. "Mommy." Vera walked over, crouched down, and pulled her close, burying her face in Lily's soft little shoulder. She breathed in that warm scent of baby lotion and milk, the smell of innocence, of everything she was fighting to protect. Her eyes stung for a moment, but she didn't cry. She'd done enough crying over Derek's show. She was done. She held her daughter, feeling the small, trusting weight of her, then released her gently. "Did you have a good day, sweetheart?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "I drew a picture. It's for you." Vera smiled, the first real smile she'd managed all day. "I can't wait to see it." She stood up and went to the kitchen for water. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised the glass. She stared at the quivering surface of the water, watching the ceiling light shatter into wavering bright rings. Then she set it down and walked into the study to turn on her computer. She needed to find out exactly what that debt was about. She needed to understand the trap he'd laid. And she needed to find a way out. A week later, the summons arrived. Vera studied the pale yellow paper 3 times over. The plaintiff was Malcolm Fong. The claim was brief and clinical, the kind of dry legal language that could ruin a life. 7 years earlier, Derek had borrowed $320,000 from him for an investment. The court had ruled in Fong's favor. Derek had never paid a cent. Now the creditor, citing Article 538 of the Civil Code, was petitioning to revoke all of Derek's gifts to Vera during the period of indebtedness, including the apartment purchased outright, the Mercedes sedan, and the cash gift of $18,800. The argument, Derek, while already in debt, had transferred substantial assets to Vera without compensation, severely impairing the creditor Malcolm Fong's legal interests. On paper, it was airtight. On paper, she was about to lose everything. Vera set the paper down and braced her hands on the desk. She stared at the wall for a long time, her mind churning. She'd majored in financial management in college, not a lawyer, but she understood the basic logic. Derek's scheme revolved around the legal tool of creditor's right of revocation. If a person is already in debt, any uncompensated transfers they make during that period can be undone at the creditor's request. The law was designed to prevent deadbeats from hiding assets. Derek had weaponized it against his ex-wife. What she couldn't wrap her head around, 7 years ago, when he'd bought her the apartment and the car, he'd taken her to a notary and signed formal gift agreements. She still had both notarized documents locked in her safe, clear terms, witnesses' signatures, official notary stamps embossed with the seal of the state. How could something so official, so thorough, be powerless against a creditor's claim? How could a document that said, "This is an unconditional gift," be overturned by a debt she'd never known existed? She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb hovered over a name, Yvonne Sue, college senior. Yvonne was 2 years ahead, now a partner at the city's largest law firm, specializing in family and property disputes. She had a reputation for being brilliant, relentless, and utterly unflappable. They weren't close, but they'd worked together in the student council for a year. Vera remembered Yvonne as the kind of person who never raised her voice but always won the argument. She was exactly who Vera needed right now. Her heart beat faster as she dialed. It rang 3 times before a voice answered, calm, crisp, efficient. Vera. Long time. Vera skipped the pleasantries. There was no time for that. She laid out the situation in quick, clear strokes, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. The line went quiet for a few seconds. Then Yvonne said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll go through your materials. Don't panic yet. Just don't panic." At 9:30 the next day, Vera sat in Yvonne's office. The summons and a stack of printed legal provisions lay spread across the polished wood table. Yvonne sat opposite in a navy blazer, thin-framed glasses, a silver pen in hand, occasionally scribbling in the margins. Her office was all clean lines and warm light, a space designed for clarity, for solutions, for winning. After about half an hour, Yvonne capped her pen and looked up. Her eyes behind the glasses were sharp and assessing. "This isn't novel. I've seen 3 or 4 similar cases in my practice. The core mechanism is using the creditor's right of revocation to claw back premarital gifts. On the surface, the legal elements are there. Your ex-husband did acquire assets for you while in debt, and the creditor does have standing to petition." Vera's heart sank. "So I can't win." Yvonne pushed her glasses up. "On the standard path, no. Because a gift agreement only binds you and him, it doesn't affect third-party creditors. Even if you notarized it 10,000 times, if the court finds he was fraudulently transferring assets, the gift can still be reversed. That's the law. That's the reality." She paused, tapping her silver pen twice on the desk. The sound was measured, deliberate. "But," she drew the word out, "your case has one very subtle opening. Looking at what you brought, that debt was incurred before marriage, right? The court judgment was issued before marriage, right? And the creditor hasn't asserted any rights for 7 years, correct?" Vera nodded, her throat tight. Yvonne's lips curved, just slightly, but Vera caught a glint of light in her eyes. "That's interesting. A debtor owes 320,000, the creditor doesn't push, doesn't collect, doesn't enforce for 7 years, and then, the very day after your divorce, they file an enforcement petition on the dot. Don't you think that timing is a little too perfect? A little too convenient?" Vera's eyes slowly brightened. The fog in her mind was starting to clear. "You think they planned it?" Yvonne nodded. "My preliminary assessment is that this debt is probably fabricated. Your ex-husband and this Malcolm Fong are likely in cahoots. They staged a loan dispute, got a court judgment, kept it in their back pocket, and waited until your ex-husband had bled you dry before springing it. The judgment itself is real, the procedure was proper, but the debt itself is fake. If we can prove that debt never existed, then the entire revocation claim built on it collapses like a house of cards." Vera took a deep breath and sat up straighter. Hope flickered in her chest, small, fragile, but real. How do we prove it? Yvonne studied her with a calculating look, evaluating her the way a chess master evaluates the board. Tell me, what was Derek supposedly investing in when he took that money? What did he do with the $300,000? Do you have his bank statements from back then? Any other financial records between him and Malcolm Fong besides the loan? Vera thought, searched her memory, then shook her head. He never let me touch any of that. He said he didn't want me to worry, that men handle business outside. All his bank cards, investment accounts, he managed everything himself. I never even knew his passwords. I was so stupid. I trusted him completely. Yvonne didn't seem disappointed. She nodded slightly. Then we go another way. I know someone, an investigator our firm collaborates with. He specializes in legal evidence gathering for family law. His methods are entirely aboveboard, no illegal tactics, but he's remarkably effective at tracing a person's financial network through public records. If there's a money trail, he'll find it. Do you want to work with him? Vera didn't hesitate. Yes. Whatever it costs. Whatever it takes. The investigator was Miles Hua, early 40s, broad-shouldered with a square jaw and steady eyes. He spoke in a measured, precise tone, every sentence carrying professional exactitude. He sat in Yvonne's reception area with a laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard for a few minutes before looking up. Let me confirm a few things. 7 years ago, Derek was a sales manager at a company called Grandview Building Materials, making about $12,000 a month. Correct? Vera nodded. Yes. He bought you the apartment and the car around the time of your engagement, total value around $320,000, plus the cash gift of $18,800, total about $338,000. With his income and family background at the time, there was no way he could have afforded that. His parents are retired state enterprise employees, their combined pension is under $8,000 a month. No family money to draw on. No inheritance. No secret trust fund. So where did the money come from? Miles turned his screen toward Vera. On it was a chart, clean and professional. This is the shareholder structure of Grandview Building Materials from public corporate filings. 7 years ago, there was a major shareholder with 40%, a firm called Maplewood Capital, and its legal representative is Malcolm Fong. When Derek was sales manager at Grandview, his direct business contact was this same Malcolm Fong. Vera stared at the screen, and something clicked in her head like a lock turning. So Malcolm Fong was Derek's client, not a random stranger. Exactly. Miles pulled up another document. Not only that. Maplewood Capital had frequent business dealings with Derek back then. There are 17 traceable transfers between them, totaling over $200,000. Money flowed both ways, in and out, lent and repaid. Their financial relationship was highly active, nothing like a normal creditor-debtor arrangement. Real creditors don't lend and borrow back and forth like college roommates. Yvonne interjected from the side, this is a crucial lead. If we can show that Malcolm Fong and Derek have a far more intertwined economic relationship than a simple loan, then there's a strong case that the 320 debt was fabricated. We just need to complete the chain of evidence. Miles closed his laptop and looked at Vera with steady eyes. Next I'll need to pull a few things, Malcolm Fong's personal bank statements, Derek's fund flows from that period, and where that alleged $300,000 investment actually ended up. All of this can be obtained legally, once the court issues an investigation order, banks and corporate registries cooperate. But you'll need to get the litigation moving first so the court will grant the order. Vera nodded, her gaze steely. Let's get started. I'll file right away. I'm not letting him take anything else from me. Over the next 2 weeks, Vera moved like a meticulously calibrated machine. She woke at 6, made breakfast for Lily, dropped her at kindergarten, and then spent every available hour at her computer or on the phone with Yvonne and Miles. With Yvonne's guidance, she formally submitted her response to the court, challenging the creditor's revocation claim on the grounds of doubtful debt authenticity. Simultaneously, she petitioned for an investigation order to obtain the complete bank records of Malcolm Fong and Derek from 7 years prior. While waiting for approval, Vera didn't sit idle. She combed through every old document in the house: contracts, furniture receipts, utility bills, even random account numbers Derek had jotted on sticky notes that she'd once dismissed as meaningless scribbles. She organized everything by category in color-coded folders, building her own mini-evidence archive. She stayed up late into the night, her eyes burning, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. During this process, she found something interesting: an old wallet of Derek's that he'd left behind when he moved out. Inside, wedged behind a loyalty card for a coffee shop, was a bank card he'd forgotten, not his payroll account, not his usual credit card, but a savings account from an out-of-town bank. The card was faded, the magnetic strip scratched, but the number was legible. Vera photographed the card number and sent it to Miles. 2 days later, he gave her an answer that made her heart race. The account holder was Malcolm Fong, but 7 years ago, more than $270,000 had flowed from that card into Derek's personal account. In other words, Derek's so-called borrowing $300,000 from Malcolm Fong was essentially Malcolm transferring money to him, and even earlier, Derek had transferred comparable amounts from his company account back to Malcolm. Money flowed back and forth like an underground river, hidden beneath the visible surface of a loan contract and a court judgment. It was a shell game, a sleight of hand, a performance designed to fool the court and destroy her. Vera called Yvonne, her voice trembling slightly but her resolve iron. So they really were putting on an act. Yvonne chuckled on the other end. A pretty elaborate one too. They even got a court judgment. Talk about commitment. But it's fine. Once we connect this money trail, the judge will see whether this debt is real or not. And I promise you, Vera, she'll see. A week later, the investigation order came through. Miles went to the banks and pulled the complete account records for Malcolm Fong and Derek. He also obtained Grandview's business contracts and payment records with Maplewood Capital from the corporate registry. He compiled everything into a report over 100 pages, highlighting every key node in red, every transfer, date, amount, and memo, all laid out with forensic clarity. When Vera got the report, she sat on her living room floor and flipped through it page by page. Lily's Lego blocks were scattered across the carpet in colorful piles, but Vera barely noticed. She stopped at one page: Derek's large transfer from 6 years ago, recipient, Velvet Lounge, amount $11,000. The sender account was the same card he'd shared with Malcolm Fong. Vera stared at that name for a long time. Velvet Lounge. She knew it. 3 years ago, she'd passed by its entrance on her way home from a late meeting and seen Derek's car parked outside. A young woman in a red dress got out of the passenger side and took his arm as they walked in. Derek had said it was a work dinner. Vera had believed him. She'd asked nothing, just silently put his perfume-scented shirt in the wash. She remembered the night vividly, the way she'd scrubbed the collar until her fingers were raw, trying to remove a stain that wasn't there, while he slept soundly in their bed. She turned the page. There was more: Derek's transfers to Selena Sue over the years, totaling nearly $40,000. Monthly payments, like clockwork. Gifts. Rent for an apartment Vera never knew about. Though not directly relevant to the case, they cut Vera like tiny blades, slicing away the last faint, unconscious remnants of feeling she'd harbored for him. She didn't feel angry. She didn't feel sad. She felt something cleaner, the relief of a fever breaking, the clarity of a fog lifting. He was a stranger now, and she owed him nothing. The first hearing was in early December. Vera wore a black turtleneck and charcoal wide-leg trousers, her hair pulled back sleekly. She looked cool and composed, a woman who had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Yvonne walked beside her with a black briefcase containing over 100 pages of evidence and 2 core charts. They strode into the courtroom like they owned it. Derek arrived with his lawyer, a balding, middle-aged man with a gold-toothed smile that made Vera's skin crawl. He also brought Selena, who'd put on some weight over 3 years, her face heavily made up under a pink fur vest that screamed, "Look at me," in all the wrong ways. She sat in the gallery, crossing her legs and occasionally touching up her lipstick, her eyes scanning the room like she was at a party. Vera's gaze swept over them for a fleeting moment, then calmly returned. She took her place opposite the plaintiff's table. Though she was the defendant, she carried herself like someone in control. Her posture was straight, her hands steady. She looked at Derek across the room, and she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a kind smile. A smile that said, "I know everything, and you're about to find out what that means." Derek's lawyer opened with a passionate speech, his voice booming and theatrical. He painted Derek as a devoted husband who, despite entrepreneurial failure and crushing debt, still lovingly provided for his wife, and Vera as a greedy ex-wife who turned her back after accepting his generosity. At one point he even pulled out a handkerchief to dab his forehead, playing to the gallery like a bad actor in a community theater. Yvonne listened in silence, expressionless. When he finished, she rose slowly, her movements unhurried and deliberate. She submitted Miles's financial trail report with the quiet confidence of someone who knew she was holding a winning hand. "Your Honor, following the summons, my client conducted independent investigation and evidence gathering. According to lawfully obtained materials from banks and corporate registries, there exists between plaintiff Malcolm Fong and defendant Derek Show a complex financial relationship far beyond a simple loan. Over 7 years, their accounts recorded dozens of reciprocal transfers, ranging from thousands to hundreds of thousands. We have compiled all fund flows into a comparative chart, with each transaction's timeline and direction clearly marked." The courtroom screen lit up with a large color-coded diagram. Derek's accounts on the left, Malcolm's on the right, arrows of different colors connecting them in every direction. The arrows formed a dense web, a spider's nest of financial entanglement. It was beautiful in its complexity and damning in its clarity. In the gallery, Selena's compact mirror slipped and hit her knee with a small clatter. Derek's face changed. He shot a look at his lawyer, whose forehead was now beading with sweat. Vera watched them both with cold satisfaction. Yvonne continued, more critically, plaintiff Malcolm Fong never once asserted any repayment rights against defendant Derek Show over 7 full years. Bank records show frequent transfers between their accounts throughout this period, yet there is no record of any demand, extension, or interest payment. Not a single collection letter. Not a single phone call. Not a single email. This pattern is inconsistent with every genuine lending case we've ever seen. The judge leafed through the materials, her gaze lingering on the chart. Her expression was unreadable, but her fingers moved slowly over the pages, absorbing every detail. She looked up. "Counsel for the plaintiff, how do you respond to these fund flow records?" Derek's lawyer stood, stammering, This only shows other business dealings between them, it doesn't prove the loan itself was fabricated." Yvonne didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, quietly, "Your Honor, my team also uncovered another critical lead. 3 months after the alleged loan, Malcolm Fong's Maplewood Capital transferred $97,000, through an intermediary company, to an account belonging to Derek's relative. 2 months later, that money flowed back to Malcolm Fong's personal account through other channels. This outbound transfer return pathway, in our assessment, displays a strong, circular characteristic." She submitted another chart. This one was even clearer. Money left Malcolm's account, passed through Derek's, went through a third-party company, and circled back to Malcolm. A closed loop. A perfect circle of nothing. There was no investment, no business deal, no economic activity, just a stage play with numbers. The courtroom was silent for about 3 seconds. Then Derek shot to his feet, face livid, his composure shattered. "She's lying." That was normal business. "Defendant Derek Show, sit down." The judge rapped her gavel, not loudly, but with unyielding authority. "It is not yet your turn to speak. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." Derek stiffened and slowly sank back down. He glanced at Selena in the gallery. Her face had gone pale, and she'd cracked her powder compact in her grip. Her pink vest suddenly looked garish and cheap, her carefully applied makeup masking nothing. After the hearing, Vera walked out with Yvonne into the December wind. The cold bit her face, but her chest burned. Yvonne patted her shoulder. "Today went very well." I saw the judge's expression. "She's beginning to doubt. As long as we keep reinforcing the evidence chain, by the final ruling, they'll likely drop the case." Vera nodded. "What else are we missing?" "The one most convincing piece of direct evidence, proof that the 300,000 loan never actually happened." Yvonne paused. "Do you remember Derek ever mentioning this investment to anyone? Or leaving any written record?" A memory flashed in Vera's mind. The first spring festival after their marriage, Derek had drunk too much, much more than usual, and slumped on the sofa, slurring his words. She'd been in the kitchen washing dishes when he called out, "Honey, come here." She'd come, dish towel in hand, and he'd pulled her down beside him, his breath thick with baijiu. "You know business is sometimes about appearances," he'd said, waving a hand vaguely. "That thing with Malcolm and me, it's really a favor exchange. He helps me, I help him. We lift each other up. It's all smoke and mirrors, babe." Smoke and mirrors. She'd thought it was drunken nonsense at the time, had patted his hand and guided him to bed. But she remembered it clearly now, the words, the tone, the dismissive wave of his hand. She told Yvonne. Yvonne was quiet for a few seconds. "Oral testimony alone isn't legally binding, but if we can find a witness who heard those words at the time, that changes everything." Vera's eyes lit up. "My parents were there that spring festival. My father was in the next room. He heard it too." Over the following days, Vera did something she later felt was the best decision she'd ever made. She called her parents and asked them to testify. At first, her father George was furious upon hearing what Derek had done, his voice crackled with rage over the phone. "That snake! That ungrateful, scheming snake! I vouched for him. I put my reputation on the line for him, and this is how he repays us." But after Vera explained everything, both parents calmed down. Her father had been a section chief at a state enterprise for 20 years, methodical, careful, and blessed with a memory like a steel trap. He recalled the spring festival in detail and provided Yvonne with a written witness statement, describing the exact time, place, and content of Derek's drunken remarks. Yvonne had the statement notarized and submitted it as supplementary evidence. "This," she told Vera, "is our ace in the hole. A witness who heard the defendant admit the debt was a sham. It doesn't get any better than this." The second hearing was scheduled for late December. During that interval, Vera's life maintained a strange surface calm. Every morning she took Lily to kindergarten, then went to her job at a small cultural company, a position she'd found after the divorce. The pay was modest, but the environment was wholesome, and her boss was understanding about her time off for court matters. She'd rebuilt her life piece by piece, brick by brick, and she was proud of what she'd built. Evenings, she cooked dinner for Lily, helped her draw, built blocks, read picture books. The number of times Lily asked, "When is Daddy coming home?" dwindled, from 3 times a day to once every 3 days, then almost never. Children adapt like water, filling whatever container holds them. Lily was resilient in a way that made Vera's heart ache and swell at the same time. One night, as Vera was tucking her in, Lily asked abruptly, "Mommy, will there be a new daddy someday?" Vera was peeling an apple for breakfast, the knife paused on the skin. She looked down at her daughter's bright eyes, thought for a moment, and said, "Maybe there will be a nice uncle someday, not a new daddy, just someone who likes Mommy and likes Lily too." "But even if there isn't, Mommy and Lily are great together, right?" Lily nodded firmly. "Right. Mommy's the best." Vera cut the apple into small pieces and handed them to her. She watched her daughter chew with puffed cheeks, and the taut string inside her loosened just a little. Whatever happened with the lawsuit, she still had this soft little creature. That was enough. But Derek wasn't done making her life difficult. 3 days before the hearing, Vera received a text from an unknown number. The sender claimed to be a friend of Derek's and rambled on, urging Vera to be sensible, saying Derek had connections at the courthouse and she was wasting her time. The message was long, rambling, and pathetically transparent. Attached was a photo, Lily on the kindergarten slide, taken from a distance, but recognizable. Her red jacket. Her little pink backpack. Her face, laughing. Vera stood in her living room, phone in hand, fingers cold. The blood drained from her face and then rushed back, hot and furious. He'd gone after her daughter. He'd crossed every line. She saved the photo, screenshotted the message, and called Yvonne. Yvonne's tone was ice. "Keep all of this. I'll file a police report tomorrow morning." Threatening conduct like this constitutes intimidation. Though the penalty may be light, it'll severely damage their image before the judge. "He just gave us another weapon." Vera's voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "Do it. File the report. I want it on the record." She picked up her phone again and replied to the unknown number, "I've screenshotted and filed a police report. Send anything else, and I'll let your lawyer explain it." "Derek, I know it's you." "Coward." No reply. The message vanished like a stone into deep water. 2 days later, she brought the police report receipt to court and met Yvonne. Yvonne glanced at it and nodded. "Good. With this and everything else we have, our hand is strong enough. Tomorrow in court, don't overthink, just let the process work. He'll hang himself." December 23rd, the final hearing. The weather was bitterly cold, a thin layer of ice coated the courthouse steps, and maintenance workers had scattered salt that crunched underfoot. The sky was white and empty, like a blank page waiting to be written. This time, Derek didn't bring Selena. He sat at the defendant's table. In this case, his role was unusual. He was both a named defendant and an interested party, so he was required to appear personally. His complexion was worse than before, eyes sunken, chin stubbled, a smudge on the lens of his gold-rimmed glasses. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His tie was crooked. His shirt was wrinkled. He was coming apart at the seams, and everyone in the courtroom could see it. Vera sat across from him, less than 10 feet apart, a long table and thick stacks of files between them. She didn't avoid his gaze. She met it calmly, once, then looked down to arrange her folder. There was no anger in her eyes. No fear. Just the quiet confidence of a woman who had done her homework. The hearing began. Yvonne had prepared even more thoroughly this time. She'd printed the entire financial chain Miles had uncovered as a wall-sized poster, covering the table. Each transfer was broken into 3 components: date, amount, destination, highlighted in different colors. It was a work of art, a testament to meticulous investigation. She laid it out piece by piece for the court. First, within 2 months of the court judgment on the alleged $300,000 loan, more than $180,000 had flowed back, under various pretexts, to accounts associated with Malcolm Fong's companies. Not repayment. Not interest. Just recycling. Second, Malcolm Fong himself was simultaneously brokering a real estate project for Derek. There was a clear business partnership between them, not a simple creditor-debtor relationship. They were allies, collaborators, co-conspirators. Third, over 7 years, Malcolm Fong had never once sent Derek a written demand, never claimed any interest, never applied for enforcement. The sole action was filing an enforcement petition the very day after Vera and Derek's divorce. The timing was too perfect, too choreographed. A blind person could see the strings. Your Honor, Yvonne concluded, based on the above 3 points, we have strong grounds to assert that the alleged loan between plaintiff Malcolm Fong and defendant Derek Zhou was a fabricated debt constructed for a specific purpose. It lacks any genuine economic basis. The plaintiff's claim for revocation of the defendant's property rights is therefore unsupported by fact. Furthermore, I submit to the court a sworn witness statement from Vera's father, George Chen, who personally heard the defendant admit, in his own words, that the debt was a favor exchange and smoke and mirrors. She placed the notarized statement on the bench. The judge read it slowly, her lips moving almost imperceptibly. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. When Yvonne finished, the judge was silent for a long moment, scanning the massive fund flow chart. She turned to the plaintiff's table. Counsel for the plaintiff, any response to the evidence presented by the defense? Derek's lawyer stammered worse this time, recycling the same phrases, normal business dealings, the loan was real, but with every sentence, Yvonne countered with fresh documentation, like a chess player forcing her opponent to the edge of the board. He had nowhere left to run. No moves left to make. Derek couldn't hold still. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh squeal. She took my apartment, my car, my gift money, and now she turns around and refuses to acknowledge it? She's the one who. The judge rapped her gavel, sharp and final. Mr. Zhou. One more word, and I will hold you in contempt of court. Sit down. Now. His lawyer yanked him back down. Derek's chest heaved, facial muscles twitching uncontrollably. His hands were shaking. His composure was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces. Looking at him, Vera thought, this is what a man looks like when he's lost everything from the inside out. He was no longer the smug marketing director, no longer the man who'd swaggered with his mistress. He was a hollow puppet, its stuffing pulled out, barely holding a shell. He had nothing left, no dignity, no leverage, no lies that hadn't been exposed. The judge announced a recess and scheduled a later date for the verdict. Vera walked out into a December sun that had broken through the clouds, thin golden light spreading across the ice like scattered diamonds. Yvonne walked beside her, switching her briefcase to her other hand, shoulders relaxing. I think our odds are excellent. The judge didn't credit any of their core arguments the entire time. She listened attentively to every piece of our evidence. And the witness statement was the nail in the coffin. Vera exhaled a plume of mist. Something occurred to her. Yvonne, if the court ultimately rules the debt was fabricated, does that mean Derek and Malcolm Fong did something illegal? Yvonne pushed up her glasses, her tone matter of fact. Fabricating a debt, forging litigation materials, using a court judgment to pursue a fraudulent claim, this can constitute criminal fraud. The judge didn't rule on that point today, but if the final judgment affirms the debt was bogus, Malcolm and Derek will have a very hard time walking away clean. We're talking potential criminal charges, Vera. Real prison time. Vera's steps slowed. She didn't speak, but the corner of her mouth curved upward just slightly, not a smile, but something deeper, the calm that comes after dust settles. Justice wasn't just about keeping her apartment and her car. It was about watching him answer for what he'd done. Verdict day was the 8th of the 12th lunar month, a traditional holiday for eating laba porridge. The morning dawned overcast, with flurries forecast for evening. Before leaving, Vera dressed Lily in her favorite red down jacket, crouched to zip it all the way up, and pulled a knitted cap over her ears. Mommy has to go out today. Auntie will pick you up after school. When Mommy gets home, I'll cook us hot laba porridge. We'll put in red dates and longan and lotus seeds, all your favorites. Lily stood on tiptoe and kissed her cheek. Go get them, Mommy. I'll be so proud of you. Vera ruffled her downy head, grabbed her bag, and left. When she reached the courthouse, Yvonne was already waiting at the bottom of the steps, holding a cup of hot soy milk. Drink up, warm your hands. You're going to need them steady. Vera took a sip. Sweetness spread from her tongue down her throat, and she let out a long breath, white mist dissolving into the air. She felt calm. Not nervous, not anxious, just calm. She'd done everything she could. The rest was in the hands of the court. Derek was there too. He wore a black puffer jacket, hunched and shrunken, standing by the opposite pillar, a far cry from his former tailored suit executive image. His lawyer was absent. The gold-toothed man had apparently bailed on what he saw as a losing cause. Derek stood alone, staring at the ground, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than she remembered. Diminished. Pathetic. Vera didn't look at him. She followed Yvonne into the courtroom, took her seat, set her bag at her feet, and clasped her hands on the table. Her heartbeat was steady, neither fast nor slow, like the last stillness before a storm breaks. The judge entered. The clerk verified identities. The verdict began. Later, Vera would recall the words many times, but never the exact phrasing. She only remembered fragments, each one landing like a hammer blow. Upon trial, this court finds that the debt in question lacks a genuine basis. The fund flows between plaintiff Malcolm Fong and defendant Derek show clear circular characteristics. The plaintiff's claim for revocation lacks factual and legal foundation. Then, the plaintiff's claims are hereby dismissed in their entirety. Court costs are assessed against the plaintiff. And the final line, the one that made Vera's heart soar, in light of the suspected fabrication of debt and fraudulent litigation, this court hereby refers the relevant evidence to the public security authorities for further investigation. Yvonne let out a soft breath beside her, whispering, "We won. We actually won." Vera didn't move for a long moment. She sat perfectly still, absorbing the words. Then she turned her head and looked at Derek. He'd collapsed in his chair like a man whose spine had been ripped out, lips bloodless, face gray, his eyes behind the lenses holding something utterly shattered. He'd understood the final sentence. Police involvement meant the performance he and Malcolm had so carefully staged would move from the courtroom to an interrogation room. The masks were off. The game was over. In the gallery, Vera's mother sat in the back row in her favorite burgundy padded coat, her hands clasped together on her knees. When the verdict came, her shoulders dropped and her eyes reddened instantly. Vera's father sat beside her, face tense, but the corner of his mouth trembled just slightly, a tiny crack in his stoic facade that told Vera everything. Vera stood, walked back, and hugged her mother, then clasped her father's hand. He patted her shoulder, his voice hoarse with emotion. "It's over, sweetheart. It's finally over." Vera nodded. She didn't look back at Derek. She didn't need to anymore. He no longer had any connection to her. He'd lost everything in that courtroom, in that fabricated debt, in those carefully constructed lies. Everything. Including the last shred of patience and respect she'd ever given him. He was nothing now. Less than nothing. When they stepped out of the courthouse, light snow had begun to fall. Thin, delicate flakes settled on Vera's hair and shoulders, cool, but not cold. She stood on the steps for a few seconds, tilting her head toward the gray-white sky. Snowflakes landed on her lashes and melted into tiny droplets, like tears she didn't need to shed anymore. Yvonne came up beside her. "Come on, I'll drive you home. It's Laba today. I've got a jar of porridge mix my mom sent. It has everything, red beans, lotus seeds, longan, dried dates. We'll make a proper celebration of it." Vera smiled, a real smile, full and warm. "I'd love that." The car left the courthouse and merged into the main flow of traffic. Vera leaned against the passenger window, watching the snow whirl outside. Shop fronts had already hung red New Year's decorations, lanterns, good luck characters, tiny banners, blazing like small fires against the gray winter backdrop. People were hurrying home, bundled in coats and scarves, carrying bags of groceries and gifts. The world was moving on. So was she. Her phone buzzed, a voice message from Lily's kindergarten teacher. She tapped it, and her daughter's milky voice came through. "Mommy, Auntie said today we drink laba porridge. I'm waiting for you to cook it. I'll help put in the red dates. I'll be the best helper ever." Vera's nose stung with happy tears. She texted back, "Okay, sweetheart. I'll be home soon. We'll make the best porridge ever." She locked her phone and leaned back against the headrest, closing her eyes. The snow outside grew thicker, but the car's heat wrapped her in soft warmth. Her fingers rested on her knee, nails cleanly trimmed, their tips faintly pink. Laba Festival, winter snow. Everything had settled. A week before Chinese New Year, Yvonne called. Vera was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, when her phone buzzed on the counter. "The police have made progress," Yvonne said, her voice bright. "Malcolm Fong has been questioned and has confessed to colluding with Derek to fabricate the debt. He sang like a canary. Apparently Derek promised him a cut of whatever he recovered from you. Derek was brought in 2 days ago. He hasn't been released yet. Based on current evidence, both will likely face criminal charges for fraudulent litigation. We're looking at real prison time, Vera." Yvonne paused, a smile creeping into her voice. "One more thing, Derek's company is in chaos. His marketing director position is essentially gone. The head office sent in auditors who found he'd improperly reimbursed nearly $100,000 through his position over the years. Fake receipts, phantom vendors, the works. Even if he's released, his job is gone. His reputation is gone. Everything he spent 7 years building, gone." Vera leaned against her kitchen counter, holding a stalk of celery, listening with a soft smile. "So my apartment and car are fully safe now." "Fully safe. And not only that, you could countersue Derek for concealing material facts during the divorce and maliciously prosecuting, seeking damages for your legal fees and lost time. We have all the documentation. It would be an open and shut case." Vera turned off the tap and shook water from her hands. "Let's hold off for now. I want to let his criminal case play out first. I don't need the money, but I want him to sweat. I want him to know exactly what he lost, and how thoroughly he lost it." Yvonne laughed, a warm, genuine laugh. "I knew I liked you, Vera. You've got steel in you. How's that laba porridge coming along?" "Been simmering all morning on low heat. The red beans are perfectly soft. The whole kitchen smells like cinnamon and dates. Enjoy it. You earned it." On New Year's Eve, Vera took Lily to her parents' house. The feast was abundant: braised fish, sweet and sour ribs, 4-joy meatballs, stir-fried shrimp, and her mother's signature 8-treasure rice, a sticky, sweet concoction of glutinous rice, candied fruits, nuts, and red bean paste. As Vera helped set the table, her father George called from the study, "Sweetheart, come here a moment." Vera wiped her hands and went in. Her father pulled a craft envelope from his desk drawer. "This is for you. Not much, just some savings your mother and I put aside. Keep it, in case you ever need it." Vera opened it, a passbook in her name with 50,000. Her eyes instantly burned with tears. "Dad, I don't need this. I have my own income now, the house and car are secure, I can cover Lily's school." George shoved it back into her hands, his face stern but his eyes soft. "You take it. A father giving his daughter money is only right. Besides," his voice dropped, husky with emotion, "I didn't watch out for you back then. I let you marry that rotten bastard. I vouched for him. This is my apology. Vera clutched the envelope, her throat blocked by something soft and swollen. She hugged her father tightly, then went to the kitchen and hugged her mother, then carried the 8 treasure rice back to the table and put a piece of fish on Lily's plate. Lily chewed for a moment, then suddenly stood up with her little cup and announced to the whole table, "Wish Grandma and Grandpa good health. Wish Mommy gets prettier and prettier. And," she paused, thinking hard, "wish everybody happy forever." Everyone laughed. Outside, fireworks burst across the sky, their colors splintering against the window's paper cuts into a shower of warm petals. Vera looked around the table, at her parents, at her daughter, at the faces of people who loved her, and felt a deep, settling warmth in her chest. This was her family. This was her life. And it was good. In March, Vera received a formal notice from the court. Derek was sentenced to 1 year in prison, suspended for 2 years, and fined a substantial amount, for fraudulent litigation. Malcolm Fong, as co-conspirator, received a harsher sentence with actual imprisonment, 18 months, no suspension. Derek's company formally terminated his employment for cause. All the connections and industry goodwill he'd accumulated over 7 years evaporated in the wreckage of his own stage drama. His name was mud in every boardroom in the city. Vera read the notice while working on an exhibition plan at her office. She put her phone down and continued writing, smooth, no pause, no hesitation. She felt nothing for him anymore. Not anger. Not pity. Not even contempt. He was simply irrelevant. That evening, as she walked Lily home from kindergarten, they passed a new dessert shop. Lily pointed at a strawberry cake in the window, her eyes wide and pleading. Vera took her inside, and they sat at a small round table, sharing the cake. Lily got cream on her nose, and Vera laughed as she wiped it off with a napkin. It was a small moment, a tiny joy, but it was hers. All hers. At the end of March, Vera made a decision. She used the salary and bonus she'd saved over the past months to buy a new sofa and curtains for the apartment. The old set had been Derek's choice, a dull gray fabric sofa, shapeless from the start, with a collapsed cushion after years of use. It had always been uncomfortable, always looked like it belonged in a waiting room. The new one was warm orange, wide and soft, with deep cushions that swallowed you up in comfort. Lily loved burying herself in it after school, only her little feet sticking out, kicking happily. The curtains she chose were light beige linen, airy and translucent. On spring afternoons, sunlight poured through, bathing the whole living room in a gentle golden glow. It transformed the space. It felt like a new home. One afternoon, Vera sat in that light with a cup of tea, watching Lily hold a tea party with her stuffed animals. Her daughter was playing 5 roles simultaneously, delivering 20 minutes of meandering, nonsense dialogue that was utterly adorable. Teddy was the king. Bunny was the queen. Little Fox was the troublesome jester. Lily orchestrated the whole production with the seriousness of a Broadway director. As Vera watched, she realized that the heavy weight that had pressed on her heart for so long had finally lifted. She took a sip of tea, warm, perfect, not too hot and not too cold, and the comforting temperature spread from her throat all the way to her stomach. She felt light. Free. Whole. She set the cup down, picked up her phone, and texted Yvonne, "Yvonne, can you draft something for me? I want to sue Derek for my legal fees and lost wages from all this. The amount isn't large, maybe 20,000, but I want a judgment on paper. I want him to know, in writing, from the court, that he owes me." Yvonne replied instantly, "Should have done that long ago. I'll send you the draft next week. Consider it a belated New Year's gift." Vera put her phone down and watched Lily's One Girl show a little longer. Then she walked to the window and opened it halfway. April air flowed in, carrying the scent of earth and new grass, warm and soft as feathers against her cheek. Outside, the old locust tree was sprouting fresh leaves, tender green and densely clustered, rustling in the breeze. She remembered moving into this apartment 7 years ago, young and hopeful and so desperately in love. She'd stood at this same window and imagined a future, a beautiful future with Derek. Now she stood here again, the same window, the same tree, but everything else had changed. And she was better for it. Stronger. Wiser. Free. She leaned against the window frame and inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the vibrant, growing smell of spring. The world was waking up, and so was she. Behind her, Lily's milky voice called, "Mommy. Teddy says it's time for tea. He's very insistent." Vera turned and smiled, a full, radiant smile. "Coming, sweetheart. Tell Teddy I'm on my way." Sunlight poured in from behind her, outlining her figure in a thin golden edge. She walked toward her daughter, steps light and certain, her slippers pressing warm shadows on the beige curtain light, each footfall solid on the floor. All the things that had once weighed on her, the lies, the betrayals, the scheming, the threats, she dismantled them one by one and tossed them out the half-open window behind her. The spring wind would carry them all away, to some nameless place, until not even a shadow remained. And she just kept walking forward. Into the light. Into the warmth. Into her new life.